This used to be the deal. Work hard, stay disciplined, be responsible, and your life would slowly improve. Maybe not glamorous, maybe not rich, but stable. You would be able to afford a home, raise a family, save a little money, and believe that your effort meant something. That promise shaped entire generations. Parents passed it to their children. Schools repeated it. Employers depended on it. Politicians kept selling it. Work hard now, and later, life will make sense. But for millions of people, that deal is gone. Today, you can work longer hours, be more productive than ever, do everything you were told to do, and still feel like you're falling behind. So what happened? Did people become lazy? Did ambition disappear? Or did the economy quietly change the rules, while pretending the old promise still worked? Because today, millions of people are working extremely hard, and still cannot afford the life that hard work was supposed to buy. They are productive, they are disciplined, they are exhausted, and yet somehow they are stuck. So the obvious question is, if people are still working this hard, why doesn't it feel like hard work pays anymore? The answer is uncomfortable. Because the system did not stop needing hard work, it just stopped rewarding it fairly. The idea that hard work pays was never a law of nature. It was a social arrangement. That arrangement worked best during periods when wages rose with productivity, housing remained relatively attainable, education had a clearer payoff, and long-term employment was more common. In other words, hard work seemed to pay because the economy was structured in a way that allowed workers to capture at least part of the value they created. That is the part people forget. Hard work did not magically create prosperity on its own. It created prosperity when it existed inside a system that linked effort to reward. And once that link weakens, the same effort no longer produces the same life. That is exactly what millions of people are experiencing now. They are being told to apply an old survival formula inside a completely different economic reality. And when it does not work, they blame themselves. But the deeper problem is that the bargain changed. One of the biggest changes in modern economies is that people can produce more than ever before. Technology improved. Workflows accelerated. Software compressed entire departments into a few tools. Communication became instant. Output scaled. In theory, that should have made workers more valuable. And in a narrow sense, it did. But being more valuable to the system is not the same as being paid more by it. That is the real break. Workers became more productive, but the rewards from that productivity did not flow evenly back to them. Instead, a larger share of the upside moved toward owners, investors, platforms, executives, and institutions with stronger bargaining power. So from the workers' point of view, the experience became bizarre. You are faster than workers in previous generations, more reachable, more measurable, more optimized, more available, and often more replaceable. You create more value, but you do not feel richer. You feel pressured. This is one of the defining contradictions of modern work. The system became better at extracting productivity than distributing security. That is why people feel like they are running harder on a treadmill that moves faster every year. The effort is real. The fatigue is real. The value is real. But the reward no longer scales with the sacrifice the way people were taught it would. Even if wages had merely grown slowly, life might still have felt manageable. But that is not what happened. The second major break is that many of the things people need to build a stable life became dramatically harder to afford. Housing, education, healthcare, childcare, transportation, even simple peace of mind. These costs did not just rise. They became structurally heavy, and that changes everything. Because once the essentials of life absorb more of your income, hard work stops feeling like a ladder and starts feeling like maintenance. You are not climbing. You are defending. You are not building wealth. You are trying not to drown. That is why so many people with full-time jobs feel poor in a way that previous generations find difficult to understand. They are not necessarily poor by effort. They are poor by economic design. When rent rises faster than wages, hard work loses power. When asset prices rise faster than salaries, discipline loses power. When stability becomes expensive, responsibility itself becomes exhausting. So even people doing what society asked of them begin to feel trapped. They budget better. They work more hours. They delay purchases. They postpone rest. They lower expectations. And still, the system keeps moving the finish line. At that point, the problem is no longer motivation. It is math. This is the part that makes people deeply uncomfortable, because it forces a distinction many societies prefer not to say out loud. Hard work and reward are no longer tightly linked. Leverage and reward are. Leverage can mean ownership. It can mean capital. It can mean distribution. It can mean audience. It can mean credentials. It can mean geographic advantage. It can mean access to systems that scale your output. And once leverage enters the picture, a strange thing happens. A person working incredibly hard can earn less than someone whose effort is lower, but whose position is better. This feels morally wrong to many people because it clashes with the ethics they were raised with. But economically, it explains a lot. The person who owns the asset often benefits more than the person maintaining it. The person who controls the platform often benefits more than the people feeding it. The person with pricing power often benefits more than the person producing daily value. That does not mean labor stopped mattering. It means labor without leverage became weak. And if a culture keeps praising hard work without explaining leverage, workers end up trapped inside a story that flatters their character while quietly limiting their outcomes. That is one reason modern workers often feel confused. They were told to become more diligent. What they often needed was more bargaining power, more ownership, more scarcity, or more control over where value flows. The economy did not become a place where effort disappeared. It became a place where effort alone was no longer enough. There is another reason hard work feels broken now. In the old model, more effort at least seemed likely to move life forward. In the new model, more effort often gets absorbed by systems designed to consume it. Emails expand. Availability becomes expected. Deadlines multiply. Performance becomes permanent. The workday leaks into the evening. The phone becomes a manager. Rest starts to feel irresponsible. And slowly, people begin trading the only things they truly own: their time, attention, health, relationships, and energy, for rewards that no longer feel proportionate. That is why modern burnout feels different. It is not just exhaustion, it is disillusionment. People are not only tired, they are starting to suspect that the exchange itself is broken. Because if you sacrifice your time, miss your family, numb your body, delay your life, and still cannot secure stability, then the problem is not that you failed to work hard enough. The problem is that the system priced your effort cheaply and your survival expensively. That realization hits hard, because it forces people to question something almost sacred. Maybe being a good worker is no longer the same thing as building a good life. When a society keeps repeating that hard work pays, people do something psychologically dangerous. They turn structural failure into personal shame. If the promise does not work, they assume they are the problem. Maybe I'm not disciplined enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I wasted my 20s. Maybe everyone else figured something out that I missed. This is one of the most effective ways a broken system protects itself. It convinces individuals to personalize what is often economic. That does not mean personal choices do not matter. They do. Skills matter. Habits matter. Strategy matters. Character matters. But none of that changes the fact that people are making those choices inside a harsher landscape. And when the landscape changes, advice that once sounded wise can become misleading. Just work harder is useful advice only when hard work still has purchasing power. If effort no longer buys security the way it used to, then repeating that slogan becomes less like wisdom and more like gaslighting. That is why this conversation matters. Not to discourage people from working, not to romanticize laziness, but to stop confusing moral effort with economic outcome. Those are no longer the same thing. The real lesson is not that hard work is worthless. It is that hard work is no longer sufficient by itself. It still matters. It still builds skills. It still creates value. It still separates serious people from unserious ones. But it does not automatically produce security. Not in a world where costs outrun wages. Not in a world where ownership beats effort. Not in a world where institutions extract more than they return. Not in a world where visibility, networks, distribution, and assets shape outcomes more than sacrifice alone. So the modern problem is not that people stopped working hard. It is that many are still using hard work as if it were the entire strategy. But hard work without leverage becomes obedience. Hard work without ownership becomes maintenance. Hard work without direction becomes exhaustion. And that is why so many people feel betrayed. They did not reject the rules, they followed them. And the reward never arrived. Maybe that is the most important thing to understand. When people say hard work doesn't pay anymore, they are not always saying effort has no value. They are saying something more precise. They are saying the old promise no longer matches the modern economy. And once a society keeps selling a promise it no longer honors, frustration becomes inevitable. Because people can endure difficulty. They can endure sacrifice. They can endure slow progress. What they struggle to endure is a rigged exchange dressed up as virtue. So no, hard work did not become meaningless. But in many parts of modern life, it stopped being enough. And until people understand that, they will keep blaming themselves for failing inside a game that quietly changed its rules.